Welcome to another Front 7 podcast right here on YouTube. I am your host, Money Mike. Boy, there are a lot of people talking after last night's game between the Broncos and the Panthers. Trevor Siemian, a lot of people were questioning what he could do. How long will it be until Paxton Lynch takes over? There's all these questions, and a lot of Panthers are going to win because, obviously Cam Newton superior to Trevor Siemian. Now, I said it in my AFC Predictions video. I thought that people were taking in too much stock in the quarterback matchup. I really thought that the Broncos were set up to win regardless of who the quarterback was, and I was right. And of course, it also helps if Graham Gano misses a game-winning field goal at the end of the game. But the big stories coming out of the game, or big story, there's a lot of stories coming from last night's game, but for the most part, when you look at it, everybody is talking about the hits on Cam Newton. And I think a lot of fans have echoed this same statement before, and I think it rings true, especially after last night, was that you see where the NFL kinda does throw out the roughing the passer penalty more so based on favoritism, bias. I don't know. I feel as if the hits that Cam Newton was taking over and over, and there was not a single roughing the passer penalty until the one that helped that towards the end that offset a penalty on the Broncos or on the Panthers, so that kind of offset. But all the hits he took, there was not a single roughing the passer, and Cam took a lot of big hits. There were hits that I was sitting there with my friend watching it. We were just sitting there, and it was like, where are the flags? Like, why wasn't there any roughing the passer penalty? I was waiting for it to happen. Every hit he took, I was like, that's a flag. But then nothing would happen. And I kept sitting there, and I'm, echoing pretty much what everybody has said today. If that was any other quarterback, that would have been a flag. Specifically, the people who believe the NFL protect the Golden Boys. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning before he retired, Drew Brees. You get the picture. So, yes, in theory, I do think, given the situations, how hard those hits were, that I do believe that another quarterback would have gotten that call. For as bad as those hits looked, and then right towards the end there, obvious helmet to helmet, it seemed like he was concussed. I was really surprised that they didn't pull him out of the game. I really thought Cam was going to get injured, and it was going to be one of those things where, just like the Vikings, where they lost Teddy Bridgewater. Of course, that was in practice, but the Panthers would lose their starting quarterback and Cam Newton due to an injury because of how hard those hits were. And it just seemed like it was going to be a bad start to the season for the Panthers, on top of the fact that they lost the game. But it would have been worse if they had lost Cam Newton to an injury after all those hits that Cam Newton took, which were not flagged. And really, you have to wonder, the title of this video here, did last night's game, the officiating, did that expose the favoritism of roughing the passer calls towards certain quarterbacks only? And in hindsight, you could easily say yes. And it's easy for people to say, oh, well, yeah, if Tom Brady was hit that hard, that'd be a flag. Or if somebody looked at him wrong, it would be a flag. I truly think the NFL needs to clean up their mess here. And it's going to be hard to do so. Because I can tell you right now, and I think everybody else will too, on Sunday we're going to see big hits to quarterbacks. After what we saw Thursday night, where they were hitting Cam hard, if any of those hits are repeated to other quarterbacks on Sunday, be it Derek Carr, Drew Brees, Joe Flacco, Tyrod Taylor, even Monday night, Big Ben, Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, Blaine Gabbert, to any quarterback on Sunday or Monday, will those hits not be flagged, or will they be flagged due to the fact that the NFL is obviously has to clean up after this, because they have a lot of questions to answer, and I'm sure Gene Steratore, who was the official in that game, has a lot of questions to answer himself. Now, of course, just like the NFL has done the last couple years, when the game is done and over, the win-loss is already taken effect, the NFL likes to come out and admit certain calls should have went this way, certain challenges should have went that way, and it's easy to say, oh, well, they got it wrong after the game, but the NFL has consistently been inconsistent with their rules. And when certain calls happen, they're inconsistent. A clear offensive or defensive pass interference won't get called, but then a very questionable ticky-tacky pass interference call will be made on a play that really shouldn't have been called offensive or defensive pass interference. So the NFL is really just adding on to their whole entire legitimacy here. And, it's something the NFL definitely needs to look at going forward for next year. According to a league office personnel, they considered the play that Brandon Marshall, the linebacker Brandon Marshall I might add, got away with an obvious missed call. Marshall lowered his helmet and launched himself into Newton's head. And he will certainly be fined, yada yada yada. Like I said, again, to admit these things don't do anything. I mean, it's fine to admit them after a game, but, that doesn't change the outcome. It's something that needs to be looked at right away. And it needs to, the league needs to look at having something where maybe a guy in the booth or something can radio down to the official, say, hey, throw a flag, they're roughing the passer, or, there's something happened over here. Just something of the officials missing something. It'll be easy for somebody to look down and have full view of everything. Maybe even have the TV broadcast view or something of being able to see what happens and then radio down to an official and say, hey, throw a flag, this is what happened, so-and-so did this, so-and-so, whatever. And of course, the NFL is trying to deal with this whole concussion thing. And so the NFL has put like 2 spotters up in the booths, I believe, to kind of help out with teams. They can stop the game if they feel somebody needs to be removed, a player needs to be removed from the game to check on concussions, or if they have a concussion, which again surprised me why Cam wasn't pulled, especially when he was down on all 4. He was literally, it looked to me like he was knocked out. And when he got up, it was clear. It looked like something was wrong. And just like how they completely missed on Case Keenum last year, it looks like they missed out on Cam in the first game of the year already. These are the things that we should not be talking about. We should be talking about how great of a game that was and great of a comeback the Broncos had to win the game. Then we should be talking about all this other stuff about injuries and the hits. We should be talking about the game itself. But instead, because of the way the NFL officiates things, here we are, thanks to questionable non-calls, we cannot talk about how great the game was. Now, according to the NFL, the medical staff saw no reason to remove Cam Newton from the game. This is the quote. There was communication between medical personnel on the Carolina sideline, including the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant and the two independent certified athletic trainer spotters in the booth. During stoppage in play while on field, officials were in the process of administering penalties. The unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant and team physician requested video from the spotters and reviewed the play. They concluded there was no indications of a concussion that would require evaluation or further evaluation and the removal of the players from the game. I'm not sure what game they were watching. I mean, they must have not been watching the same game that I saw and that you guys saw last night. I mean, it was clear Cam should have been pulled. So I don't know if they were not doing their job right or what, but Cam should have been pulled. I mean, there's no question about it. And for them to say that there was no further evaluation needed, it makes me kind of question who they have as their spotters if they didn't remove Cam after an obvious situation where he should have been pulled. Cam Newton had this to say in terms of the hits that he took and how he felt about it. I really like the officiating crew. It wasn't something I know they did intentionally, but it's not fun getting hit in the head. We didn't lose the game off that. I know that for a fact. Now, his teammates did come to his aid and spoke up for him in a situation where Cam clearly is taking the high road on this. Do you see them calling it? Said linebacker Thomas Davis. Early in the game, a guy took 2-3 steps to hit him in the head and they didn't call a penalty. Doesn't matter, they ain't going to change it. Greg Olsen, I know he's the biggest guy on the field, but he's still the quarterback. We'll see what some of those helmets look like. Obviously, we got one of them, but we didn't get many yards off of it. And of course, the last one that they did get, and I believe the only one, was the one that allowed Graham Gano to get into field goal range and missed the game-winning kick. A Panthers official added that Newton passed concussion tests in the locker room, on the team bus, on the team plane, and early Friday morning. So, okay. Coach Ron Rivera still faced questions about the handling of Newton when he met with the media on Friday. And I'm not going to question the doctors. They're the trained professionals. Now, he did say there should have been more flags thrown, which is one of the big things people are talking about, is the lack of flags and the potential favoritism that was shown by the NFL. So, is this a case of favoritism? And, does this match up? What we saw in the game, does this match up with everybody's, or I guess the fan theory of certain quarterbacks get the certain roughing the passer calls, and they're questionable at best, while other quarterbacks can take big hits without a single call. being made for roughing the passer. Now, the one thing I will say here is I do gotta place some blame on general manager David Gettleman. We saw in the Super Bowl, Michael Orr and Mike Remmers, they got manhandled by Von Miller and Marcus Ware, and it was clear their offensive line could not stand up to the defense of the Denver Broncos. And so they came back into the game on Thursday with the same offensive line as beforehand. And then you figure all the hits that Cam Newton took. All those hits, if Cam had better protection, a lot of those hits would have not happened. So some blame on what happened does go to the NFL for not throwing the flag, not pulling Cam Newton out. So some of the blame does go to the NFL for allowing these hits and not penalizing them as they should have been. Some of the blame also goes to the concussion spotters for allowing Newton to stay in the game. And then also some of the blame does go towards David Gettleman, as I'm saying, because he didn't do nothing to upgrade the Panthers' offensive line. And if he had done anything to improve it, a lot of those hits may not have happened. You give the quarterback an offensive line to keep him upright, you're going to have less hits on the quarterback. It's simple as that. And also, it doesn't help, too, that the Panthers try to make Cam Newton a running back nearly every freaking play and have him extend the plays and try to do so much more than just be a quarterback, in which then he puts himself in situations where he's a runner per the NFL rules, and all of a sudden the roughing the passer goes out the window because now he's established himself as a runner and no longer a passer. So I think a lot of this is a blame goes all the way around. NFL, medical staff, the concussion spotters, the Panthers, everybody takes blame. Now, as I said, we will see a lot of big hits to quarterbacks on Sunday. And whether or not they can get penalized, well, I guess we'll see how much the NFL favorites certain quarterbacks and who will get the calls and who won't. This has been Money Mike. You've been listening to the Front 7 Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to me so you can listen to more of the Front 7 Podcast throughout the year, as I will discuss the biggest stories in the NFL leading up to Super Bowl 51 in Houston. And until then, enjoy some football.